Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time, 8 o'clock Central, to talk about strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, and to support each of you. It's a pleasure to visit with you this Thursday morning, May 25th, 2023. Yesterday, we announced the rollout of the Business Accelerator program. So I want to take just a moment, review that, and then we'll get into our topic today. So what is this Business Accelerator? So each of you on the free website, the landing page, the link that we've provided, you have a new page on your replicated website, just as is on the main one, guaranteedfunding.org, called Business Accelerator. So what is the Business Accelerator? How does it benefit the client? And how does it benefit you? Let's cover those three things, and then we'll get to our process. So as we can see here on the page, business accelerators are fast-paced, structured programs positioning entrepreneurial ventures for fast funding. Now, in the case of our accelerator, we do limit the number of participants, and we provide a cash infusion upfront and/or on achievement of milestones. Participants in our accelerator are on an aggressive growth trajectory. They're going to receive a unique commercial address for lender credibility and a minimum of $100,000. And we have a full training that describes it down here. But let's just simplify. What is the accelerator? The accelerator is a grant subsidized program whereby you and I can help small businesses access a minimum of $100,000. Well, how is that possible? Well, we know, you and I have talked about in other trainings, if we want business funding, not talking about personal funding, but if we want business funding, it starts with what? What is the most critical element if we want business funding? Before we worry about anything else, it's, do we have a true business address? And so many of these small businesses don't. Many of them are using post office boxes or residential addresses or shared office addresses. So we start with that critical element, and then we work with them to get their file qualified for a minimum of $100,000. Well, what does that mean? Well, we gather data and we see, are they ready to go to funding? And if not, what are the issues? What do they need help with? Do they need help with having a good business plan that's lender compliant? Do they need help adding trade lines to their business credit so the business looks credible? Do they have their financials put together? If not, so in other words, we help them build their loan package. So that's what the Business Accelerator does. It positions the small business to be fundable, guaranteed. And that's great, right? So obviously that answers the question of what's the benefit to the participant. They're getting the unique commercial address, which is at the core of being able to get business funding. And then we're working with them to build their loan package to accomplish whatever needs to be done so they get at least $100,000. So that's what the Business Accelerator does. That's how the participant benefits. And then from your perspective, you make $3,000 minimum for each business that you refer into the accelerator. Well, how does that happen? You get 3% of their capital raise. 3% of a minimum of 100,000 is 3,000. Now, if they get 200,000 capital raise, now you get 6,000. So that's a brief synopsis of what the Business Accelerator is, how it benefits the client, and how you benefit. Now let's get to the point today, which is, how do we introduce, how do we get prospective small businesses to be aware of the Business Accelerator and to enroll? Because many of you I talked to, like Lincoln I was talking to this morning, one of the smartest guys on our team, but he's not very successful in converting his prospects. So let's go back and review the process that we've trained on. So we believe that we should start with an assessment. And we did this training on May 4th, and you'll find the 6-question checklist on the Startup Business Funding Package. Scroll down. So right here is where it's parked. I've already opened it for us. But if you haven't reviewed this, of course, you can go back and review the May 4th training, but specifically, you'll find it there. So we're going to role play. We want this to be very, very practical and implementable, reproducible today. So let's say that we have a prospect. Let's say the prospect is Claude. Claude's actually one of our distribution partners. He's on the training, but we'll just pick him out. So let's say that Claude responded to my Craigslist ad or my Facebook ad, or I did a presentation at the library or the chamber. It doesn't matter how I generated Claude as a lead, but Claude is a lead. So Claude somehow has learned about our offering. He wants to learn more. And now I'm going to have a conversation with Claude. So we're going to role play this. So I like to I would text Claude first and say, hey, do you have a minute to talk about this guaranteed funding program? I don't want to really blindside him by just calling him, because he might be at the grocery store, he might be at the doctor, he might be asleep. Who knows what Claude's doing at any moment in time. So I text Claude, hey, Claude, you have a minute so we can talk about this funding program you inquired about. So if he responds back, yes, then ring, ring. I give him a call and say, hey, Claude, this is Tom Montgomery. I'm with Guaranteed Funding. We have that grant subsidized funding program, and I understand that you may be interested in getting capital to start or grow a business. Is that true? And I want him to say yes. Now, Claude might be talkative and want to tell me a lot of things, but really I'm just trying to determine, yeah, I'm not wasting my time or wasting his time. And so then I would proceed and say, Claude, okay, great. I need just a couple minutes of your time to go through a question checklist, a funding checklist, to see if you qualify or not. Just going to take a couple minutes. Could we do that now, Claude? And Claude will probably say yes. I want Claude to see these questions when we're going through them. I don't want to just read them off, because Claude might be multitasking. Maybe he's a visual learner. So I want to make sure that Claude sees these questions. Well, how would you get these questions to Claude? Well, I showed you where they're at on the startup funding package. You could download them. You could text it to Claude. You could have Claude go to your replicated website and navigate to this point. However you want to get the questions to Claude, but I want him to see the questions as we go through them together. Make sense? All right. So Claude, now let's just use the typical. So I'd say, well, Claude, I've got these 6 funding questions to go through with you to see if you qualify for our grant subsidized program. Are you near an internet browser now? If so, I would navigate him over so he opens this up. If not, I would probably just text it to him. Okay, so now Claude sees the questions, and here we progress. All right, Claude, just 6 questions so we can see if you qualify or not. Number 1, do you have a commercial address for your business, Claude? And what that means is this is a true commercial address, not residential, not a post office box, not a shared office address. So do you have a unique commercial address and you have a lease that we can present to the lender? Because we know the lender will typically look for the lease, not just to say we have an address. So there's only one of 2 outcomes. Claude's either going to say, yep, I have it, or no, I don't. Most of the time, the prospects don't have a true, credible commercial address. That's a significant problem. Well, so what would I do? I'd say, well, Claude, so let's say Claude says no. And a lot of times your prospects, they'll give you some long drawn out, but at the end of the day, it's either yes or no. So let's say that Claude says no to that, which most will. I say, okay, that's not a problem. We can help you with that. Let's go on. Do you currently have a business that's set up, formed, and in good standing with the Secretary of State? Again, Claude might have a long narrative he wants to share with you, but what your job is to determine, is it yes or no? Okay, no, and so again, we're not going to stop or dismiss him if he gives us a no, but we're trying to get a tally list of how capital ready he is. Third, all right, Claude, if Claude doesn't have a business, then the rest of these that's formed, then the rest of these questions don't matter. I'll go through them, but if there's not a business in place, then of course a non-existent business won't be business credit worthy. A non-existent business won't have a balance sheet, won't have an income statement. So with that, in most cases, what you'll find is you'll have clients that want money, prospective clients that want money, that need money, but they simply don't qualify. And that's okay. What are we doing? We're improving their financial literacy because we're helping them understand what are the 6 things that you need to have in place to qualify for business funding. You need to have a commercial address. You need to be in good standing with the Secretary of State. We need to be business credit worthy. And of course, we can help them with all these issues. We need to make sure that our business demonstrates liquidity. We need to make sure that we have collateral for the loan. We need to make sure we have capacity. Remember the 3 C's we've talked about. So let's just carry this through. So let's say that I conduct this with Claude and he doesn't have all these elements in place, which is the norm. Most people won't, because if they did have it in place, they're frankly capital ready, they probably wouldn't need us as much. But regardless, so we role play and we determine that Claude doesn't have 6 yeses, and specifically he doesn't have a commercial address, which is at the core of getting business funding, not for personal funding, but for business funding. So what's going to happen? Now I need to get Claude navigated over to my website. You would have your own for the Business Accelerator. And so this is kind of how I would pivot and say, well, Claude, not a problem. It sounds like that you've got a really great idea. We'd love to assist you. I want to make sure that you understand how the Business Accelerator program works. The Business Accelerator essentially is working with you to get your file credible enough for funding. And it includes that important commercial address that we talked about earlier. So with that, we do guarantee in writing a minimum of $100,000. Now, Claude might say, well, $100,000, I don't need that. So he might say he either needs more or he needs less. So how do you respond to that? Well, let's say that Claude says he needs more than $100,000. We'd say that's fine. The process is the same. So Claude, if you want 200,000 or 300,000 or $1 million or 2 million or 3 million or 10 million, the process is the same. We need to get your documents put together, your loan package put together, and get you capital ready. So that's fine if you need more than 100,000, but we do guarantee a minimum of 100,000 in writing. Alternatively, let's say that Claude comes back and says, well, I don't need 100,000. I only need 20,000. Well, Claude, you may not qualify then, because the grant that we applied for, that we've received, we are required to help every participant get at least $100,000. Now, maybe there's other things you haven't considered, Claude, maybe a company car, so you need transportation anyway. We could get a company car under your EIN, and that would meet the criteria here. Or maybe it's just a line of credit. So you have the $20,000 loan you're looking for, and maybe we get an $80,000 line of credit set up that you could pull from if you need. If you don't need it, you don't pull from it. So usually we can overcome the objection if a prospective client says, I don't need 100,000. So there's only one of 3 scenarios. Either they're happy with the 100,000, they want more, or they want less, and that's easy to overcome. Now, Claude, I do need you to know that normally the first tranche of funding won't occur today or tomorrow. It normally is going to be about 7 days before we get your first tranche of funding. Now, what could Claude ask? Well, how much will I get in 7 days? And I'd say, well, Claude, I don't know. What we're going to do is we're going to get you set up in the system. We're going to gather some data. We're going to get you some initial funding offers very quickly. You can accept or decline any of those funding offers. You're not obligated. I don't know what offers you'll receive yet because we're too early in this with you. I don't know what the rates or the terms will be, but we'll get you the funding offers that you qualify for right now. You can accept any of those. It might be 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. I don't know. but we'll get you your initial funding offers very quickly. We'll work with you to get your file ready for the full capital raise. That's pretty attractive. Now, what Claude's probably thinking or even asking is, well, what does this cost? Well, that's a great question, because anytime you get a question, it shows the client's engaged. And so it's an opportunity to respond to the question and move them further along in the sales process. So what I'd say, well, Claude, we do all of the work of getting your loan package prepared with no upfront cost. Isn't that great? So we're going to gather the data, evaluate the data, and work with you to make sure that you meet lender criteria, and there's no upfront cost for that. Now, you do pay us, Claude, based upon the results, just like realtors, right? When you retain a realtor, you don't usually have to pay the realtor anything until closing. And so that's the way our model works, Claude, is that you'll pay us 10% of the capital raised after the capital's raised. So for example, let's say we just hit the minimum, you're going to keep 90,000 and you'll pay us the 10% for us doing all of that work. Isn't that a great deal? There's no upfront cost for helping you get your loan package together and get you capital ready. With that being said, though, we are providing you the commercial address. That is crucial. We talked about that over on the checklist. Remember, if we don't have a true commercial address, we don't look credible to lenders. The rest really doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide you a unique commercial address, mail forwarding, and that does have a cost associated with it, as you would expect. If you went and rented an office somewhere, you would probably pay the landlord. So there is an application fee one time. If you're not approved, it's refunded. And then there is a monthly fee for that commercial address. And that's because we're providing you the commercial address. It's a real address. We're doing mail forwarding. So yes, you will have the expense for the commercial address. Now, let's say that Claude, he wants the capital raise, but he doesn't want to pay for the commercial address. Hey, not a problem. Maybe I misunderstood, Claude. Do you have a commercial address already that's going to allow us to be successful? Because we're not going to be successful in this capital raise if we don't have a true commercial address. So I'm not trying to twist his arm, but maybe I misunderstood. But he might say, well, I'll go get a commercial address from my brother, Larry. Hey, great. So thank you for explaining that. So if that's the fact, then we need to pivot him over to the Access to Capital program, which is on the homepage. Here, he pays nothing up front. We still get paid off the back end. You get paid off the back end. And secondly, we don't need to charge him for the office address because he doesn't need it. So I would start with, in summary, I would conduct the questionnaire verbally with each prospect. I'd text them first, make sure they're available, have them view this, go through it with them. Not very difficult, not going to take very long. And if they don't have the commercial address, I would pivot them over to the Business Accelerator, because it provides two things. It provides the commercial address, and it provides our assistance in getting their file ready and guaranteeing them the capital raise. If for whatever reason they push back, oh, I don't want the commercial address, okay, then what we can do is just take you to the Access to Capital, because let's clarify. The Business Accelerator is the Access to Capital plus the office address, the commercial address. So the Business Accelerator is Access to Capital plus the address. So if they don't need the address, then they could just come to Access to Capital. We work with them, same guarantee, so forth. So hopefully that helps you understand the subtle difference. But with the Access to Capital, there is a refundable deposit that's paid after their first tranche of capital raise. It's a $2,500 refundable deposit. Over here on the Business Accelerator, there is no refundable deposit. They don't have to pay that, so it saves them money. All right, so let's turn it over to each of you. Questions, comments, concerns. We've talked about the importance of following the process. Assess the prospective client using this checklist. You want them to see it as well as you interact with them. If they fail question number 1, we strongly recommend getting them over to the Business Accelerator. It's a great value. And what we know is if they have some outlay, not much, then they're more likely, they have skin in the game and they're more likely to participate. But if you don't want to do this, that's okay. What you can do or move them to the access to capital. In that case, they have no upfront cost. They're not getting the address, but we still are doing the same thing with them, helping them build their loan package out, which is described. So who has questions, comments, concerns on the process? Lincoln, I'd love to hear from you because you and I talked this morning and I don't think you were following this process. Any of you have questions on the Business Accelerator program as it is? Okay, so Claude's asking, why is number 6 relevant? That's a great question. So yeah, let's go back to questions 4, if I can highlight it, 4, 5, and 6. Claude was asking about 6, but I'd feel most comfortable going through all 4. So we asked the client or prospective client, is your business liquid? How do you measure liquidity? Cash plus cash equivalents. If they say yes, that's great. That's a check mark. If they say no, that's okay. We can fix that. We can transfer assets over to them so the business is liquid. Why would that matter? To no surprise, lenders are hesitant to loan money to insolvent businesses. So I'm still not to Claude's question, but we'll get there. Question 5, do you have collateral? Why does collateral matter? To no surprise, lenders would feel more comfortable loaning money if there's collateral that can be pledged. The client either answers yes or no, and if the answer is no, not a problem, we can help them with that. Now let's get to Claude's question. His question is, why does number 6 matter? Well, capacity means the ability, the cash flow. Do we have enough money to pay back the loan? I'll give you an example. I had a client yesterday, Miss Hill, smart lady, stay-at-home mom, just a really wonderful person. But she wants to borrow lots and lots and lots of money, but she has no way to afford to pay the debt she wants to borrow. She doesn't have the cash flow or capacity. Well, that's a barrier, right? Lenders aren't fools. So they're going to look at the 3 C's of the applicants and say, okay, does this person have liquidity? Do they have, I shouldn't say this person, the business. Does this business, has it proven that it's credit worthy? Does it have collateral and does it have capacity? If they don't, if the prospective client doesn't have the 3 C's, then Claude, you and I help them. It's okay. We're just trying to determine what do they have. But specifically, Claude asked, well, why does this matter? Well, think about it. Any time that you would want to borrow money, let's say you want to get a mortgage for you and your family, you want to get a car loan, you want to open a credit card, you want to get business loans, it doesn't matter. The lender typically is going to ask, well, do you have enough money to pay this back? So imagine you and I, Claude, going down to the Porsche dealership saying, I really love that 911 convertible. It sells for $320,000, but I don't really have the money to make the payments, but I'd love to have that vehicle. Well, you're not going to get approved for financing. Same with the business loan. I want to go borrow money to start or grow a business, but I don't really have the ability to pay it back. Well, we fix that. We fix that legally and ethically, but the relevance of the question is remarkable, because to be broke, and I don't mean that negatively, but to be broke or to be insolvent and go borrow a large amount of money is a pipe dream. So what we're really good at, you and I, Claude, and everyone else that we work together, we build credible businesses. And so we help them demonstrate the business creditworthiness and the business to have collateral and the business to have capacity. So it's okay if they don't have it initially, Claude, but we need to know what's their starting point. So hopefully that made sense. Okay, so who else has questions, comments, concerns on what we've covered today? What we've covered is how to use the Business Accelerator. This is probably going to be the program that you'll bring most clients into initially. It provides immediate benefit in terms of them having a commercial address. Hopefully by now you understand why that's relevant, why that's needed. We're going to get them their first tranche of funding in just a couple days so they get funding quickly. And of course, as they get funded, they're happy, but that gets you paid, right? Because you're making 3% of the client's capital raise. So let's say that their first tranche is only $10,000. Now we're working towards a minimum of $100,000, but let's say in 7 days they get 10,000. Well, you get 3% of that. And so you're getting 3% of each tranche of capital raise. Now, for some people, they may get their full 100,000 in their first tranche. That's not the norm, but it certainly can happen. So there's great financial incentive to you and great results to the client. They're not paying advance for the loan. So don't fall into that trap. They'll say, well, I don't want to pay anything in advance. Well, okay, I respect that. Do you have a unique commercial address so we can be successful in getting your capital raise? No. Well, we need that. And that's what we're providing here. That's what you're paying for. Well, I don't want to pay for that. Okay, then we need to get you over to the Access to Capital program. We'll still build your loan package out, and there's no upfront cost. There's no commercial address included, of course. So you can see the difference. Questions, comments, concerns on the difference between Access to Capital, the Business Accelerator, questions on how to use the checklist, how to drive them to your landing page and get them into the right resource. So in my opinion, there's no selling involved. You're doing the assessment. You're just simply coming up with a yes or no for each. And based upon the response, they're telling you where we need to go with them next. In most cases, I would bring them to the Business Accelerator, but certainly the Access to Capital would eliminate them having the cost for the commercial address. The Startup Business Funding Package is great. It provides the address. It provides, if they don't have a filing with the Secretary of State, we build out their business credit. We even transfer over $10,000 of assets. So the Startup Business Funding Package is like the Business Accelerator plus a lot more. So hopefully you can see the difference between those. So there's no shortage of small businesses that want and need capital. What you and I know is it's not how bad you want or need capital, it's do you qualify. What you and I are really good at is assessing small businesses and then guiding them to the appropriate resource. So it's up to you how you want to help them. You can help clients anywhere in the world, so they can be in your state or other states. If you're a state director, obviously the focus is building out your state, but you have the ability to help clients anywhere in the country or in the world. Any questions, comments, concerns anyone has? So hopefully you're ready to go implement, right? If you signed up as a small business consultant, you should have your landing page. You can go to the Startup Business Funding Package. You can download and or review the funding checklist, which is opened here. And we need to start assessing clients. This is a process of building their financial literacy and then being able to point them to the right program. In most cases, I would start with the Business Accelerator program for the reasons stated. Any other questions? All right, Christy's asking, how do you become a small business consultant? I guess she's not one. So go to the careers page. You can watch a detailed training video here, but then you would just fill this out and we can get you set up. No cost up front to be a small business consultant. She's asking about state directors. So we have one, well, our goal is to have one state director per state, and they develop and manage the team of consultants, but we can talk about that separately. Any other questions, comments, concerns? So you've got the resource. that solves most people's problems. Most small businesses want and need capital. The problem is they're not credible enough. They don't even know what that means. So what you want to do is assess them. You can do this individually or do it with groups. And then as you assess them, then you're able to make objective recommendations, consultative comments, guidance on what next. And you have the different resources that are available on your landing page. In most cases, I would start them with the Business Accelerator. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll see you back tomorrow morning. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.